morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink. It's December 18th, and it's This Week in XR with myself, Ted Schilowitz, and today's guest, our friend Marcie Jastrow, who is the CMO of Evercast. Marcie, how are you? And thank you for joining us.
Hi, guys. How are you?
I've got my coffee. I've got Ted and Marcie. It's a beautiful day.
I know it feels like
December.
it feels like I haven't seen you guys in a year.
You haven't.
How are you all? This is so fun. You do this every Friday?
You do this every week, whether we want to or not. No, we actually do really want to. I was actually just wondering, the two of you, just thinking about it this morning, how much time do you think you have logged on a video chat client in 2020, in the year 2020, compared to every other year of your life, right? I mean, it's exponentially, like, would you say this is now a daily multi-hour occurrence for you?
Definitely.
Well, for me, because that's what my company is that I sell, I am on it.
Related.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
I'm on it from 8:45 in the morning until 4:45, 5:45 at night. So Evercast is a platform similar to a Zoom, only it was purpose built for creatives. So it is the bridge for creative collaboration for people all over the world. So if you have distributed workforce, if you have editors who are trying to edit in real time and get episodes out during this pandemic, Evercast is a platform that allows for low latency video interaction, as well as video conferencing.
I know, and Marcie, you can tell us if all the major studios are using it in some fashion. I certainly know that our studio and our parent organization that I work for, Viacom CBS, is using it, and among a whole litany of various sort of remote workflow tools that 2020 has brought to the forefront.
Yeah, it's so funny because as most of the people who know me from Immersive, I left Technicolor last year around this time, decided I wanted to go back to traditional content creation, mainly because I felt like there was no disruption actually happening in the way content creation was being created. And it just so happened, and I was putting together a whole plan of how I was going to disrupt the post-production community and the production community through technology and through social media. And what ended up happening was an old editor friend of mine, Roger Barton, who's one of the biggest editors in Hollywood, came to me and said, I don't know if you know, but I invested in this little company that is a creative collaboration tool, and I took a sabbatical and walked it into every studio and got security approval from every studio, but I don't know anybody who can sell it. I don't know how to sell this thing. I said, well, that's because you're an editor, Roger. So they asked me, would I come aboard and help them kind of organize the process? And what was so pleasing to see was that I wasn't off in my futuristic thinking. It is a platform that does disrupt. What it allows is the bridge to creatives behind the walled garden of Hollywood. So for example, we in Hollywood have lots of different creative collaboration tools. We have nonlinear tools. We have ways to create content. And then you take that content and you move it to a finishing house to do the technical finishing. Those people in those technical finishing worlds have very little outside connection outside of Hollywood. They're only playing in the top 10% of content creation. When I say top 10%, I'm talking the Netflix, the Paramounts, the Viacoms, the CBS, the high-end content creation. Where I felt like content creation and content finishing was missing was in the 35 and the 55%. And the reason why I felt like it was missing was because at the end of the day, if Joe from Milwaukee wanted to finish his feature film for Sundance release, he hands over a cut of a film, but he has no way to, he doesn't understand the specs that come back from the film festival of how to get it to P3, Rec 709. What are all those deliverables? So my idea was, well, let's service those markets. Let's service 35% and the 55 user generated content. Because if all these people that are creating user generated content need an editor or need someone to help finish their content, because there's no way they could be doing it all by themselves and pump out the amount of content they need pumping out, it was a really good way to actually sell.
Yeah,
but
well,
all I was missing was the bridge, and that was the technology.
well, and what's interesting, Marcie, and I was just thinking about this as you were talking, what has happened with your piece of this business pie has happened with a lot of industries where they start out in this very insular, creative, professional bubble, professional services, expensive, exotic. And then the consumerization tools find their way in the side door. Very inexpensive home computers, ubiquitous video chat ability, an API that exists to build like a video chat client that didn't come from the professional world, came from the consumerization world. And then it finds its way round trip on the third part of the journey back into the professional world. So it starts with like, nobody's doing it, it's professional.
Exactly.
Everybody's doing video online, it's YouTube. And now the third part of the equation is we're back to professionals leveraging the scale and scope and freedom of all of these technology tools.
Well, I think the pandemic kind of hit it really quickly. So lucky for me, when I said, yes, I'll do it. Roger had walked Evercast into every studio and gotten approval through every studio. So there was somewhat of an awareness of the product. So it made my job of socialization and awareness a little bit easier. When the pandemic hit, it was literally the fire hose moment. Right. All of these production companies went wherever they were in the world. And remember, crews would travel with major productions. Those crews included editors, assistant editors, sure, and so on. And so what happened was when the pandemic hit, everybody shut down. Everybody came back in the middle of their season, in the middle of their film, and they were like, holy shit, how are we going to finish this? And so I started, it was funny because like from, I don't know, the end of February to March 10th, we have a mechanism, which is so fascinating also. The way in which entrepreneurs are now using all of these apps and tools to call sales, right, and the modern way to sell. And that was really what my whole thesis was, right? There's a new modern way to sell. I want to understand what that modern way to sell is, how the modern way to attract a client, how do you close the deal? And I want to wrap it into one big job. And that's what my whole plan was around what my idea was, is I was going to do it all from, you know, the customer acquisition piece. So all of a sudden, let me get back to this. So all of a sudden I'm watching the rise of our people that are coming to our website because they've heard about our website. And it literally went from trickling to, I don't know, 10 to 15 people a day wanting to see our on-demand demo or contacting sales to literally hundreds. Now, my biggest dilemma was, and I think, Ted, you and I had this conversation as I was leaving Technicolor, I really wanted to go back to post-production. And I was very well known in post. A lot of people knew me. All the editors knew me, directors knew me, but I didn't know whether I was going to be readily received. Welcomed back with open arms, because I was the defiant one who went to immersive media and wanted to learn about new cool workflows and new ways. I was in a headset for 3 years. Well, what was so cool was my name was on the email once everybody came to the website. And so it was literally a launch back into post-production without even trying, because every friend that I ever knew, or every person I ever worked with, or every editor I ever worked with was like, oh, it's Marcie. We know her. And so that was, that's really where it all started. It was kind of crazy. And actually a beautiful scenario. We kept a lot of people working. Evercast actually got an Emmy for their remote collaboration tool this year. So it's been one of those years where you're like, wait a second, this was supposed to be not so great of a year. And it hasn't been for most people. That's why I don't like to talk about how good it's been for Evercast.
Well, congrats. That's a great story. Sounds like the pandemic has been good for your business.
I think it's been good for a lot of people in the entertainment industry, where they've been able to continue to work. You know,
It's been good for anybody that has figured out how to take something from the physical world and bring it into the virtual world.
Yeah.
That's the order of magnitude of looking at what does success look like in 2020. It's things we used to do in person that we do either via a remote delivery layer or a fully digital layer. And that is the success quotient.
Yeah.
Like, been coming for a long time. And you know, people like the three of us have been seeing it for a long time coming, you know, with streaming media and remote delivery and video chat client, and everything becomes, I was actually talking to a very large computer company that we work with a lot. And we were talking about how the computer over the last, now call it 50 plus years, has continued to make these concentric circles around becoming the cultural relevant and economic relevant point of the entire planet.
Yes.
And 2020 became sort of the ultimate defining moment of everything that we need to do now needs to run via some sort of compute function that creates a virtual layer, a artificial layer that starts to feel real. And it has become, you know, a massive economic force. So there we are. Here we are, 2020, doing it right now.
Marcie, now you're back in the picture business. Don't you miss all of us in VR?
I do. I'm fortunate that people haven't, you know, exiled me from the VR world. I was doing a podcast myself with Christina Heller for a while. We did 8 episodes, and then it got a little messy to try to figure that out during the whole Black Lives. I mean, it was like one catastrophe after another, and I was like, you know what? Let's do our 8 episode arc and then step back into it. I think that what's been really interesting is I learned a lot in Immersive. I understood, you know, I learned a lot as it related to content creation in a way that not a lot of people really understood, and or not a lot of people were doing. Remember, the whole goal of the tech was to take traditional film and television making and then look at the game workflow or the game engine workflow, and how do you put that together, right? Thus creating virtual production. And what has been interesting about Evercast is it's been placed on some of the biggest virtual production shows that are being built right now. Why is that? Probably because I can speak to it in a way where using Evercast, where some executives might not want to put on a headset in a virtual production scenario. So this is kind of a step to the headset for those people that don't want to be in an immersed world. So we're using Evercast a lot for virtual scouting. We're using it a lot for game engine workflows, environments, animation, visual effects. And so those people are adopting it and are seeing what people are doing with it in that world.
So this is our last podcast of the year. Ted and I usually just bat around the week's news that catches our attention, queuing off of my weekly column in Forbes. So we take what the week gives us. This has been kind of a slow week. Obviously, we're getting into the end of the year. Our next podcast will be on January 4th, right before virtual CES starts. So that might be worth mulling over for a second. I think CES in Las Vegas was the last time I saw you in the real, Marcie. It may have been.
I know, right?
In the real, Ted. We're coming around the bend on a year.
Yeah.
Wow. But the two stories I wanted to talk about this week, we touched on Roblox a little bit last week. They pushed their IPO to 2021. I think they just ran out the clock in 2020. But Rec Room just announced yesterday that they had raised an additional $20 million. For those of you who don't know, Rec Room is a free social VR universe where people are making movies in VR. They're building worlds using elaborate tools that Rec Room has created. And of course, there's all the different games that exist in Rec Room right now, from ping pong to, I think, their most popular game, paintball. It skews very younger, I think, than even VR chat, which also, you can easily find yourself surrounded by 12-year-olds. I think it looks like, at least from their press, and they don't do a lot of press, but it looks like from their press that they're embracing that. They have, like most VR destinations that are free, experienced tremendous growth this year, as did VR chat, as did Microsoft's Altspace. So, clearly people are going to be spending, as we predicted, a lot of time in social worlds, partly because they're free and partly because there's more and more there.
Right.
Of course, the challenge of social VR is that you have to know who you are, where you are, and what you're supposed to do there. So avatar chat, that always plagued Altspace. Right? I think it's changed. Altspace has become more of an adult destination, maybe more of a business-like destination than some of the others, although still it's animated, it's full of whimsy. But $20 million, I don't know, I couldn't divine what their overall valuation was, but I've got to think it's probably close to $500 million now.
Yeah, it may not be that high. It's probably in the low hundreds of millions. It's probably a 10x off that investment, or an 8x off that investment. So call it 160, 170 million. It is interesting you bring up the point about that these clients that do often have a lot of sameness to them, right? I mean, they give you a social sort of lobby. You can sort of move around and you can create events and you can be with friends or you can be with strangers. They're all finding their own personality traits now. Yeah. So Rec Room is absolutely, I do not spend a lot of time in Rec Room because it is very much, it's the kids' playpen, which is great. And they need a place to play, and that's absolutely great. I spend more time in a work productivity tool called Spatial, which is sort of a grown-up world, right? And we use that, and a little bit in VR chat, which is kind of the sort of teenager world, right? So it's,
you can still find yourself surrounded by little kids, often kids who don't speak English.
Yes.
In VR chat. But the thing I like about VR chat is there is something to do, which is to collect or try on avatars.
Yeah.
Right. So they immediately engage you with that, and it's kind of your way into a lot of the other features that the platform has. Yeah. Anyway, great for VR, great for Against Gravity, good for them. And it's just great to see some of these platforms get traction. I've been looking at this space for a very long time, since 2015. Altspace was the very first, and they missed the timing badly.
Yeah.
And they almost went down in the sort of nadir of the VR backlash.
They held their own, and they're still there.
Yeah, well, the community, Microsoft I think the community was rallying for it, and that's the thing. Like, when you have consumers backing you and really wanting to have something there, specifically in Altspace, that's what happened. VR chat, I just have to tell you, what was so interesting for me, I was going into VR chat a lot because there's a whole XR group that goes in every Wednesday. One time I went in there and I got literally, these people were following me all around every room, and I just decided it was too creepy for me, so I stopped going to
That does happen. Charlie, I'm curious, and also Marcie too, depending on how much time you spent in this device recently, the Quest 2. I had a little bit of an epiphany over the last week or so as I've been diving back into video-centric stuff and looking at, you know, the bane of our existence of like 360 video, which just sort of never really worked, and the poly count was way too low on the devices, and everything was just looking kind of yucky. I did another revisit in the last couple weeks, and I tried a couple of live events, and I looked at a bunch of interesting, there's an interesting series going on of a doc filmmaker that is basically just documenting these gigantic urban areas during the pandemic and what happens to a place like Tokyo that is normally filled with humans. And I've been there many times for work, and it's empty. And it's sort of fascinating to watch that in VR as opposed to just on a TV screen, because you can really get a sense of the scope and scale and the feeling. And it actually brought tears to my eyes. Like, I'm watching empty Tokyo in VR and feeling like, wow, I just got transported back there. And now I feel like I'm in the pandemic in downtown Tokyo, in Shibuya and in Akihabara and so forth and so on. But what was interesting to me, and I'm curious if you've had this moment as well, is that the video quality is now getting really good. Like, it actually looks like video now. It doesn't look like, oh, the only thing you really should do with this stuff is make CGI graphics. And I still know that, you know, we're still at the very beginnings of our journey on these devices. So whatever we talk about, Facebook executives and Facebook big shots and the owners of Facebook all sort of like predicting that this is going to be the next social platform, and we're all like, yeah, maybe. Well, maybe they were really right. Like, they start to understand, yes, it's a long-term investment, it's a long-term strategy, but over the cycles of how we were able to get computers really, really good and really, really sophisticated and really, really high res and very inexpensive, we'll be able to do the exact same things with these sort of head-worn devices. And before you know it, we'll be watching movies, TV shows, immersive media in these devices, and it will look as good, if not better, than what we look at in traditional screens. And that moment started to happen for me the last couple of weeks. It's not as good yet, but it is vastly better than it was 18 months ago.
Well, of course, the resolution on the Quest 2 really is enabling that. You know, there's no screen door, so to speak, which was the
right. It just makes a huge difference. Like, I feel like I'm starting to watch this and I'm being entertained by it, and I don't have to default into the graphics world of Beat Saber and Robo Recall and all that stuff.
You know, it's interesting because recently, you know, I teach a course called Landscape of Immersive Media. So we're basically jumping back and forth from Zoom to VR. So we finally got around to talking about 360, of which I have been vocally dismissive since the beginning. I felt like it was content for a platform that had no content. So they were by default the content for early VR and things like the Gear VR. And since, of course, the platform has gotten better, we kind of shed 360 and left it behind as kind of a you know, a weird relative. But, you know, hopping back in, first of all, Quill Theater, a free aspect of Oculus Quest Store, is something I would recommend to everyone. There's a lot of fantastic content in there, sort of like immersive graphic novels, if you will, as well as just some fantastic pieces of dimensional art. The other thing is that I went into the Felix and Paul channel. For those of you who don't know, Felix and Paul is a Montreal studio that has probably been the foremost practitioner of 360 video, although they do immersive and many other kinds of technology. But they're best known for their 360 video of Obama's office. And so I, you know, I took my class in there, and really a lot of that content is quite extraordinary using the Quest 2. And people really, you know, because of course I've got this ongoing focus group of, young people who really have not seen a lot of this yet. Or if they've it's been very focused on video games.
Right.
So their response to it was, it always fills me with excitement because, they were like, oh my God, this is, we want to make movies like that. And so I think that, I think you're right. I think 360 with higher resolution headsets, we may yet see a renaissance of 360 as we have seen these social platforms kind of get renewed and, renewed vigor with a larger audience and better headsets. I would say it's a very good possibility we'll see something similar happening with the 360 world, and that those companies like Within and Felix and Paul, and I know there are several others who sort of bet the bank on 360 video and nearly perished because of it, may yet be vindicated.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't know if it's vindication. I think it's growth, right? And it's the ability, the whole idea of the very beginning of VR was to learn. And so and we always knew the headsets were going to take time to get better and better and better, but what were the best practices of the creation of the content? How do you do that? What are the best cameras? How do you stitch? Well, now you don't have to worry about the stitching because there's automated stitching. And so, and I think that when you look at things like Mach 1, which has advanced spatial audio, there's all of these tools now that are kind of coming together where you can create beautiful, beautiful pieces. I mean, not to plug a WAVNA anymore, but if you look at a WAVNA and what that 360 video, how we created it, what we did with it, how Lynette told the story and went from 360 video to augmented reality into interactive. I mean, that right there was the whole enchilada, and way before anybody doing any of that. So I feel like there's so much opportunity because the tools are better, because people have been banging on it for it long enough. Now the headsets are getting better.
And speaking of audio, I'll just throw this out just to get a laugh. What do we think the right price for a high-end set of headphones should be? Is it really $600?
No.
Just a question for the both of you.
So I'm using a Scarlett right now, and even my microphone is a Scarlett, and my headset is a Scarlett, and I got a great deal on it, and I can hear 5.1 in Evercast all day long.
I'm just making a little joke because the two of you know I'm the biggest Apple head on the planet. Everything, in my world is some sort of Apple-esque kind of moment. And even for me, I was like, $600 for the headphones, guys? It's a little elitist to the point of really? Is it really worth twice what the really good Bose headsets are? I don't know. I just, maybe people that are using them are like, no, it's way better. But I just find it hard to believe. I don't know.
I don't see a lot of people using headsets. I mean, or earphones.
Well, because we don't fly on airplanes anymore, right?
Well, exactly. But again, I'm on a platform all day long, video conferencing, and most people don't outfit their whole world the way I do.
Like to have, you have stuff on your ears. When Charlie and I do podcasts, we have our microphones, but we just use the audio, the speakers of the computers.
There's nothing going on here that requires any high-end audio, although our producers have often complained about the crappy quality of our mics. So
but we got better. We're doing better.
We're doing better. Our game to show them we were serious about this. So in fact, we're coming to the end of our half hour, but Ted and I have been doing this since August. So there's 5 months of building up this podcast and trying to see if there's a there. And I think we continue to do it, not because we've built a huge audience, but just because we like hanging out on Friday morning and shooting the shit about what's going on in XR. Continues to be, I think, one of the most exciting aspects of new technology, and I think is going to continue to disrupt and augment a lot of the things that we do. So, Ted, have a great New Year. Marcie, it was fantastic to see you. I miss you.
Good seeing you guys. I miss you guys too.
Yeah, hopefully in a few months we will all be together in the Rio. We will not be together.
Okay, wait, I have to ask you, are you guys going to go vaccine or no vaccine?
Oh, hell yes.
100% vaccine. Absolutely.
I mean, I'll be first in line. I can't take this shit anymore.
I can't either. I'm done.
We're all roughly the same age. I think we've all had vaccines our whole lives, and we all live to tell the tale. And it will make 2021 different than 2020. And I think everybody needs a different 2021 than different 2020. On that note, I just want to say, thanks to everybody.
That's a great note to go out on, Ted. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you January 4th.
Bye.
Cheers.